Hello, Hockey World. Let's first, we got a lot to get into today, a whole lot to get into. But let's start with Russ. Russ, what's going on?
So let's talk about the NFL. And I'm amazed. It really is a 24/7 business now. It never used to be. But with all the talk out there, with all the quarterback stuff, still Baker Mayfield is one of the number one stories out there. And I'm still going to hold to the fact that they're not going to do anything with him, and they're going to make him come into camp because he's being paid, and he will play for them this year, and then they'll trade him at the trading deadline.
No,
I don't think
he's not going to show up.
Stand on.
He's not going to show up to camp, Russ.
He won't get paid then.
He doesn't care. First of all, he's got $30 million in the bank. So what does he care? He's not going to come in for that organization and be the stopgap for because Deshaun Watson gets 6 games for questionable behavior in massage parlors. No, it's not going to happen.
He's get traded. It would have been at the draft, Mike. I don't think he's getting traded.
No, I think he's going to get traded, but I think there are teams out there that still haven't solved their quarterback situation, like Seattle. I mean, right now they've got Drew Lock as their quarterback. They didn't draft anybody, so it's wide open.
I don't think he's the answer, no matter what your quarterback problem is.
Well, right. I don't think he is either.
See, that's the question there, Kev. It's a question of what value he has. Is now Jared Goff 2.0, or I think there's probably some teams that would be willing to take a risk. It depends on what. If Cleveland is expecting a first-round pick, they're not going to get it.
No, they're not expecting it.
They're not going to get it. Jared Goff's a better quarterback than him.
Yeah, he is.
Now, I just have to say this about the NFL, and we can start the show because we got a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable how big the NFL has got, where they're making like announcements of like single games. Like, today apparently on Good Morning America, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were on there to reveal like the biggest Monday night matchup of the year. They were going to release the schedule. I mean, the schedule used to come out and it was just, okay, here's the schedule. And it would be like an hour
on radio.
Right. An hour on radio talk. And they'd go through, okay, win, loss. Now it's like, white smoke is coming out and it's like the Pope is being announced. It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not ridiculous. It's just the way they're playing to the fans now. The fans now, that's how they view it. I'm a Detroit Lions season ticket holder, and I look forward to the thing. I mean, I don't, live on or die based on who they're going to play, but it is a big deal. And, if the team is basically, and the news stations are just reacting to what, fans want to hear. Like, it's major news when that schedule comes out.
The only thing I would argue, I think I watched one Monday night game the whole year. I still don't watch Monday Night Football anymore.
I don't either unless the Bills are playing, because I'm not in fantasy football anymore. And believe me, fantasy football on Monday night was an absolute killer because, you have one guy left, you need him to score a touchdown or get 10 yards. And it drives you absolutely crazy. That's why I quit fantasy football and I'm done. So, okay, let's start.
All right, ready? Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, May 9th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I don't have anything to say about that Leafs Lightning game.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. It looks like Monday Night Football was up 11% since 2020. Is that a lot? I don't know.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I'm coming to you today from Margate, New Jersey, where I am taking a few days by myself to clean the place and just be by myself. Like, really excited to be by myself.
Don't have to shower either.
I'm not going to shower. The only reason I'm going to dress is because I have to clean up things. But you come down here and the beach in the off season is just awesome. It's like there's no one here. Like I'm in a big area and there's no other car parked.
I used to live in Avalon, and half the year nobody was there.
It's amazing. I mean, this entire place, I think there's probably, I don't know, there's 30 or 40 units or whatever. I'm the only car parked up front.
Well, the way things are going, Barry Trotz will be coming down there any second.
Yes, and I think we can start there because that is definitely the surprise news of the summer so far. I think, Kevin, you said that.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
I I think it will be too. Like nobody saw that coming, and it changes things for several teams. Here in Detroit, where I live, for multiple reasons. First of all, I think Trotz becomes a person of interest, if we can call him that, for the Red Wings. But also, it may take Lane Lambert out of the mix. Lane Lambert was one of Steve Yzerman's playing buddies with the Red Wings. He was considered a guy that. I don't know if he was the top of the list, but he was certainly one of the leading candidates just based on, the start of it. And, of course, Trotz is from Manitoba. So now the Winnipeg Jets, that puts them in for him. I think the idea of being able to bring in a Manitoban, I think, would be very attractive, for that group. And I think the Flyers, one thing we know about Barry Trotz is he knows the Metro. He was with the Capitals, with the Islanders. He knows that division well. He'll have a leg up in terms of when he plays both Washington and, he certainly knows Ovechkin, and he's going to know the Islanders inside and out. Like that would be a good hire for them as well. And, so I think that changes things for three teams. I think this is stunning for the Islanders. I knew we weren't going to get any help from Lou Lamoriello, who simply said he felt like they needed a new voice and left to go at that. He would not say whether Lane Lambert, which to me would make a lot of sense there. He did a good job when Trotz had COVID, but he wouldn't go there even and say he's even one of the candidates. But so it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I know Russ has some thoughts on Trotz in Philadelphia. I had heard a couple other names that are, starting to get, because, obviously this just happened a couple hours ago, but Kirk Muller, who's an assistant coach with Calgary, who Lamoriello drafted when he was in New Jersey. He's been an NHL coach before. That was one name. Another name was Claude Julien, who was hired. I think Lamoriello hired him when he was in New Jersey. He's out there. So I seriously.
Interesting name. That's an interesting name, Mike, for the Islanders.
Yeah. I'm a buyer on Julien. I'm a seller on Kirk Muller.
Same here. I think that's a Lamoriello type move. This.
And the name Babcock was trending on Twitter. Forget about it not happening.
It didn't happen in Toronto.
Here's what I've been digging up.
But the quick thing about this and I also think you have to throw some teams in there that could get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs too. I think that, and that I think is we have a couple surprises perhaps happening out there. Florida's still on an interim coach. Like what happens if Florida gets taken out? In this round. I think they didn't make him ahead. They didn't really, he won the President Cup and they didn't, relieve him of the interim tag. It's like, I think that's very much, and I think to kind of go to that series for a second, I think coaching is showing up in that series as a difference. Like, I think the loss of Quenneville is a problem right now for the Florida Panthers. I don't think that they're able to attack the left wing lock because they don't see it very often.
Well,
and I think that I think
let him finish.
I think that I feel that that's happening there quite a bit. And I also feel, that we're seeing a situation where experienced guys with an experienced coach who's been there a lot are just way more relaxed, and they're way more at ease than the Panthers, who look skitterish and nervous to me. So I don't know. That's my thought.
All right. So I've been doing some digging. The first thing is, we know Trotz's contract was up after next year. So even if you're having preliminary discussions on the team, right, just looking at this team, they're built with a 1-year window. And Barry Trotz hasn't won lately. And so Barry Trotz looking at the personnel, maybe Lou looking at it, and Ledecky saying, I'm not even making money in this building other than my luxury suites. We can't even sell it out. Tickets are selling for $7. Matt Barzal's points are down. He's got to get a contract. We need to be a little more exciting here, too. And I think the mix of all that is probably what pushed Barry Trotz out, because I think it doesn't fit for him. Now, Trotz for Philly, I thought, of course, Philly would love him, but I don't think the personnel is there. I think I would use this analogy. Years ago, Phil Jackson had a choice to go to the Nets or to the Lakers. The Nets were going to be a little bit more work. The Lakers had that sort of ready-to-go team. Phil Jackson went with the ready-to-go team, and he won. And I think Trotz is going to go with one of those teams like Winnipeg that's more ready to go because they have like the elements that he would need. But Lane Lambert, the only reason I would be a little skeptical is because with Todd Reardon, everybody thought that was the perfect guy. He was under Trotz, put him in Washington, no brainer. it was a disaster. And I'm not saying Lane Lambert's going to be a disaster, but I just don't know if the Trotz tree extends to wanting to hire their assistants as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
And another interim situation that might reveal itself, like you were saying, Eck, with Florida, is Edmonton, because even though Woodcroft has done an excellent job getting them to where they are, they're 2-2 with the Kings, a Kings team that they should beat because they don't have Doughty, but Quick has been standing on his head, and if they lose with McDavid and Draisaitl again, then you have to think that they're going to go after somebody as a head coach that would put them over the line. I also heard Vancouver, because the whole situation with Boudreaux is still hanging out there, and maybe Trotz being available, and Trotz apparently has a home in British Columbia, so that might be a factor too. So I'd say there's like 6 or 7 teams that might be really have some sort of level of interest.
I think Boudreaux would like the New York market too. I do.
Yeah. I mean, I touched base with Dan Petruak, and he said that the Islanders would be looking for an offensively creative coach.
That's what I think. Yeah.
And he said that the fan base would revolt if they hired Lane Lambert, because Lane Lambert is
too.
Yeah.
That is a part of this whole
thing. I'm sure that's first and foremost in Lou Lamoriello's mind is what.
Not in Lou's mind, but in Ledecky's. It is going to matter a little bit.
Well, the reason I'm not buying into your theory, I love what Eck and Mike said though about all the extra teams, because I think Trotz will be more inclined to go to a team. He'll be 60 years old. This team, but I know Lou a long time, and I would guess if he would have been given that edict, he would have resigned. In addition to firing Barry Trotz, because he's not one who. He wants to be able to kind of run his team the way he runs it. So I doubt that it was, quite that distinct. Like, we got to sell tickets, so we've got to get an offensive guy here. Now, does Lou think that we may need to bring in? I mean, that's a possibility. But I doubt whether it was ownership. That just doesn't fit into. I mean, we all know Lou's a very principled man.
Yeah.
And I just think at his age, I think he was. He probably feels he could still get another job elsewhere. He's just that kind of guy. But one of the points I wanted to bring up about, because I really like, what Mike and Eck in particular said about the other teams because of all that. But, the one thing, if you're Florida, like, you've got the offensive horses and you're sure how dominant they are. But defensively, that's been a struggle all season.
Yep.
And as we all know, defense is an attitude, and no one instills that attitude quite like Barry Trotz.
I know.
So I think, if you're Bill Zito and you're thinking, look, I know I've got the offense and that's a skill. I've got those guys. What I don't know is whether I can get this team to buy in. Well, I think Barry Trotz could do that. So it'd be worth waiting for him to kind of see what happens. And
I think he will wait. I mean, there's no reason for him not to wait, right? There's no reason not to wait. Honestly, I mean, he could go wherever he wants to, and I think that I think Florida makes a ton of sense. I do think there were people telling me today that when I talked to some Islanders people just briefly, because I found out when I was on my way down here in the car and I tried to call a couple people that I knew. They said that there's a thought on the island of the Islanders making a move for Patrick Kane, and the concept of maybe this person speculated that maybe that's not something that Trotz wanted to do. Like, what would do?
Yeah.
That there could be some.
I'm a seller on that too, but I might have. Kane just told them he wants to stay in Chicago, and they have not given him any indication that they're going to move him out.
Yeah.
You look at their attendance in Chicago, it's fantastic for the kind of season they had this season, and Kane's a big part of that.
Well, apparently Trotz was popular with the players, so it wasn't like it was a player's fault. But I'll tell you the one thing. 2 teams that are going to be in a position to make hockey trades because they need to shake up to their NHL roster are the Islanders and the Jets. And if Trotz goes to Winnipeg, then you could see like guys like Scheifele or Wheeler traded to the Islanders, and guys like Anders Lee or Brock Nelson or somebody like that being traded from the Islanders. So it's very possible that Trotz goes someplace and gets some of the players that he had with the Islanders wherever he's going. I mean, that's just
or Paul Maurice could end up on the island too. Like that's another name that I can see.
I don't
That's what I'd say about that, because I think this is a good point. We all know Lou Lamorielle's history.
Mhm.
It's not Lane Lambert.
Right.
It's Larry Robinson. It's Jacques Lemaire. It's Pat Burns. It's guys with pedigrees. It's guys with longevity. It's guys that have won. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, I was going to ask you this, Kev, because you would know. Lou is USA Hockey. So is Torts. Would that work?
No. Well, I mean, he would not take it because it's USA Hockey, because he's always taken Canadian coach. So I don't think that he just takes the best coach. Now, would he like Tortorella? I have no idea how he feels about him, but I'm not sure that's going to help his offense.
Right.
So if he really believes, I just didn't think, as much as I think that Lane Lambert makes sense for Detroit, I just never felt that he was like an heir apparent. And also, when you're looking at that Washington, don't forget that Reardon and Trotz didn't get along. Like Reardon was Washington, was McClellan's guy.
But he was thought to be right, but he was still thought to be a similar coach.
Yeah, well, I don't know how similar he was, because they didn't do things the same way when he left. But McClellan liked him, and essentially, they were kind of trying to pave the way for Reardon to get in there, and Barry didn't like that. So
can we at least say that Trotz is a particular guy looking for particular players, because I think this is why he's moving around now.
But I think that's true, but I don't think he's the type of guy. I mean, I know you know him too, so I don't want to.
He's a great guy, but it doesn't mean he can't be like a rigid workplace guy too. You could be both.
Yeah, but he's
warm to his players, but I think his what he looks for in his vision for the team has been
but he's not Quenneville. Quenneville, if he doesn't like the guy, doesn't play him.
Right.
Okay. Barry's more of like, I'm going to try to change him.
Yeah, he adapts.
No, it's like I going to Alex Ovechkin's wedding in Russia and not going to the reception, because he said that should be a place where the players can let their hair down.
Although Trotz did bench Bellows for 11 straight games this year too. He does do that too.
Well, yeah, he does for sure. But what I'm saying is, that's not like he's not going to. He wouldn't say Bellows would never play for him. You know what I mean? Where Joel might.
I was really lucky to get to hang out with him for several hours one day when they were doing the Nashville Predators fund drive to sell season tickets when the team was going to maybe move to Hamilton. Trotz and I sat together answering phone calls and stuff like that for about, 2.5 hours. And we got to talk in between. And I was so impressed with him. He's a very impressive guy. I mean, he really is.
He's a great interview. If you get him on a show.
Yeah. And he was very candid with me. It was like, off the record stuff. He gave me all kinds of cool off the record things.
Clearly, he gets into it a little bit with the GMs at some point when he feels like he wants something or needs something to win. Because clearly, with McClellan, there was something going on there, and
it was weird.
Yeah,
it wasn't about the players. It was weird. It was weird, and that was what was going on.
McClellan had made a promise before the whole season started, and I felt like to Reardon that he was going to take over, and they weren't going to re-sign him. And then suddenly, they win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. That's what it felt like,
But the only point is just going back to the story, So he goes over there and he doesn't go to the wedding, but he does spend the Friday before talking to. Yzerman, giving him the Scotty Bowman, or talking to Ovechkin, giving him the same speech that Bowman gave Yzerman, where you got to change your game if you want to win a cup. Well, that's more of his style. Like he thinks he can change everybody, and but I don't think he gives up on him. He may not have played Bellows, but I doubt if you sat him down, do you say, is there any chance Bellows is going to play in the league? I said, well, yeah, he just needs to change. I don't know. I mean. I think Lamoriello will hire a big name. If Mike Ilitch was still alive, there'd be a big name in Detroit too. He liked big names.
Yeah. And the Flyers like big names. If Ed Snyder was still here, so
yeah. I mean, but now it's different.
Yeah.
because those guys aren't
If
around.
Islanders hire a big name, they'll sell more tickets.
So
That is a fact.
Well, that's why I mentioned Torts, because Torts is in the New York area. That would be a big splash. But I just didn't know what the personality.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. I've never had a conversation with Lou about Tortorella. I'm trying to think.
Article last week, Kevin, on our site about the coaching candidates. People should check that out.
I still think. See, I think Torts for Philly makes sense because they're underachieving.
Right.
They have some good players, and he needs to sort of shock them into reality of what hard hockey is about, because the Flyers couldn't win even 3 games in a row, and he would harp on that.
And we get the plus that would piss Zach off.
Well, another interesting aspect of the story, and we talked about it on this program, was there was at some point. Was it last season or this season? I can't remember, but Trotz talked about what a joy it was to be in the same organization with Lamoriello, because they thought a lot alike. Okay. And after every practice, they would sit around and kind of talk about the team, like he and David Poyle did.
Right.
And something obviously, during those discussions, Lamoriello must not have liked something if he thinks that they needed a new voice.
Well, the only thing I could come up with in that regard,
there was definitely an undercurrent. Sorry, Russ. There was definitely an undercurrent among the fan base for this to happen. And yes. I'm not saying Lou ever listens to the fans, but I do think that maybe he saw the
doesn't care
fans. But he saw the same thing the fans were seeing, perhaps. The Islanders fans are smart fans. Like these are. I mean, in my history at least.
If they don't believe the team can win, they will not spend the money. That is proven.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that may be what the ownership is thinking, but it's never really been. I mean, if you look at Lamoriello's history there, he never did what he should have done to try to make that team draw better. So,
I mean, that's 100%. The Islanders are in cap trouble. Now, Lou probably said to Trotz, I signed these other guys at the end of the season. They're your kind of guys. They're my kind of guys. And, it's going to be hard to maneuver other things. Do you think that would be a problem for Trotz if you told him the exact same team's coming back?
I mean, he fired him though. Trotz didn't leave, so
but Russ, I mean, it's generally accepted that they're not going to bring the same team back. That Lou is going to try to make hockey trades. I don't doubt that Lou can do that. I mean, he's got enough connections around the league. I think he's enough of an adept of a general manager to be able to do that. It's just a question of whether he gets good value for guys like Brock Nelson or whoever they decide to trade. Let me just transition.
You guys know, before we move on this last thing, Mike. You guys know I was obviously pushing the Islanders a lot this year to make the playoffs, and I was having some fun with that with you guys. But in all reality, when I did the research, they were the best team in the Eastern Conference the last 75 days of the season.
Jesus Christ!
But I mean, it's a good point in disregard to you're in the top, you're ranked 7th. In the goals against average in the league, and you just fired your coach.
You fired your coach after and when you think about the beginning, the horrible, the thing they had to be on the road forever, and all the stuff that came through the COVID situation with them, they got hit by it really hard. And then in the last 75 days, when they actually had their team sorted together, they were good. So I mean, I really find this a little bit surprising. I find it surprising from that.
How many playoff teams you think or non-playoff teams made the top 10 in goals against average?
Probably they were the only one.
Actually, there was one more.
Sure, that's a function of Trotz and Sorokin.
Who else is in that list?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's unusual that he got fired, even though the offense wasn't good. Because a lot of people think there is a governor on Barzal, but that he could be, if you let the reins loose, he could get more points. But I don't know that would be enough.
I mean, he had 85 points. He's down to 60. You can't pay a guy $8.5 or $9 million for 60 points. You can't.
Right. Statistically, Sorokin was in the top 5 of NHL goaltenders for a team that was, well out of the playoffs. So that
it's a combination, though. I mean,
Barzal only took 171 shots. Do you think Trotz went up to him and said, shoot the puck more? I don't think so.
Well, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he wanted him to create more offense. But it's I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you that he's a defensive-minded coach, but it's got him all the way to conference final 2 previous years, and they didn't look so bad.
And the Devils.
Well, the one year the bubble was an anomaly, though.
Well, yeah, for sure. But the Dallas Stars don't score either, and right now you can't tell the Calgary Flames that they're not scared to death. So
you get 2 teams that don't score.
I mean, to me, here's the thing with when you look at the like Trotz's history with the Predators, which I know Kevin and I followed a lot of his Predators career and this career. He's not afraid of like letting his top offensive guys be offensive. Like that is his thing. I mean, he has that. Some of his stars. He did do the whole thing. I'm going to teach Ovechkin how to play both ends of the ice thing, which I know. I'm sure. Barzell's heard a little bit of. I'm sure he's heard that. Ovechkin learned how to do this, and you got to do this too because you're a star. But I don't think he's a guy who puts the reins on him. I don't know. I never got a sense he put the reins on people. He just wants effort. He's an effort guy, 100%. Like the Predators are what they are because of Barry. They're still to this day an effort team because of Barry Trotz.
By the way, it looks like Spencer Knight's going to be in goal for Florida.
Really tonight?
Yeah,
that's interesting. Well, that's fun.
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you why I like it.
This is based on who was on the ice. And Bob wasn't.
Yeah, was he in the starters net? That's one of my favorite stories.
Bob,
Mike Babcock admitting he didn't know what the starters net was.
It was Johansson and Knight, and that's it.
This is the same thing that happened last year. He went to Dreger after Game 3, I think. So, and then he went to Knight. Then they went to Knight after they were down 3-0 or 3-1. All right, not to spend a lot of time on this because, like Russ says, it's boring. But the mantra, the theme of a lot of these series, the complaints of the coaches is the penalties.
Oh God!
I know. And you know what? I mean, okay. I mean, it might be a convenient excuse, Kev. It's hanging out there. But especially in the Carolina-Boston series, Rob Brindamore after the game destroyed the officials because he thought that the goal that I think it was Jake DeBrusk who scored on Antti Ranta with the puck that was
he was right on that.
Yeah, it was free in the crease. It was free in the crease, and DeBrusk pushed the goalie and then pushed the puck over the goal line. I mean, he believes that turned the series around. Now it's a 2-2 series.
Yeah, it is. And I understand the frustration with all that, but this is nothing anybody can do anything about. Like it's been going on for 100 years. I say this all the time. So what do they want us to do? Right? What they do now is they change it every year through memos, which I think is a bad way to do it.
Right.
And Russ said, let's have some consistency. Well, we're seeing a lot of penalties, so there must be some consistency.
Well, did you hear Coley Campbell on XM the other day, or it was this morning? I'm not sure. Everything's blurring into each other. But he said that if people would take the time to look at the statistics, he said over the last 5 years, we've had more penalties called per game in the playoffs than we have in the regular season over the last 5 years. This is not new. He said that, and it was interesting to hear that from him.
Well, my question would be. And by the way, I guess it's still up for debate with Spencer Knight. It's going haywire on Twitter. My question would be this. Who is losing their series because of officiating? I don't believe anybody.
No.
It's affecting certain teams. It's affecting certain teams more than others.
Brindamore would disagree.
No one's losing their series because of it.
Brindamore would disagree.
That was one call.
Right.
They're getting a lot of penalty calls, but I mean, when you watch them, when I've watched their games, I've said to myself, man, Carolina's reacting.
Boston had 9 power plays.
I don't give a damn. If you watch Carolina, they're doing stuff they don't normally do.
They are playing. Don't do dirty things. You won't get called for penalty.
Bergeron in the face and get a 4-minute penalty. No, that was dumb.
Yeah. No, that's my reaction to that. What to me, my read on what's going on there is the Boston Bruins, who have turned getting people to have penalties into an art form. They've drawn them into it, and the only thing that I thought, I thought that was a legitimate beef, but that's not really. I mean, that's one call, on the goal crease. That's not penalties. That was just so.
Well, yeah. The only way that the Bruins can score consistently is on the power play because they got that perfection
right
with
with
Grizzlick and whatever. Right. and that gives them consistent offense.
The problem we run into is that it's part of the fan lore in the NHL that penalties should be even. Now, this has been going on for forever. When I was a kid, people talked about, they had 5 penalties and we had 4. And then we propagated that idea by saying, well, the other team's up by 2 penalties, so the next call will go to.
Right, that's in our heads. That's what we think. That's
the way we say that's happening. So, but we really shouldn't ever do that. Like, who cares whether one team gets 9 and the other gets 5? Then it just means somebody hacked each other more than.
The reality is that these power plays, what they're affecting more than the fact that they're just a lot of power plays, is they're affecting, and I'm sure what Mike's going to talk about, the fact that you're keeping guys off the ice because more often, like, Matthew's getting less minutes because he doesn't kill penalties, right?
Well, yeah.
And that is the bigger factor right now, I think.
And I got to tell you,
Boston went 2 for 9. Boston went 2 for 9. Like that.
Marchand got D'Angelo completely off his game.
I was going to say, when you have a guy, I have not seen since my brother's senior league years ago, a player fire his stick at a guy who was trying to score on an empty net like D'Angelo did. He completely lost his cool, Russ. Now we know Boston is a team of rats. That's what they are. Marchand, Pasternak, Bergeron, they're all fantastic players, but they get underneath your skin, and they were going after D'Angelo, and D'Angelo lost it. And I'm surprised he didn't get a misconduct when he threw the stick, Russ.
Yeah.
It's true. That people are surprised over that.
Can you imagine what Jordan Stahl said to D'Angelo after that game? That's what I kept thinking of when I saw that.
No,
like Jordan Stahl, he said, you just fed perfectly into what
I'm sure he read him the right.
Well, right. And plus, he probably said to him as well, a guy with your reputation, you can't afford to do things like this.
Yes, I was mean to rats. Sorry.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I'll try to get some information about the Florida thing myself, but I texted some people, but I don't know what's going to happen with the goalies. But I do want to get, before we get into the Leafs and some of the games, there's a huge issue that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. That if it were anybody but the Predators would be like the biggest story in the world. And it was going to be my story today before the Trotz thing broke. It'll probably be my story tomorrow. And that's something I've been warning about forever, and other people have been warning about forever. And we saw it happen in the Predators game against the Avalanche. And that is this concept of the challenge on a goal. And if you don't get it right, you're giving the other team a power play. It makes the NHL look like such a Mickey Mouse league to me. Compared to, and this is why, because the reality is, the NFL would never. The NFL has this thing that they review in the playoffs. They review every touchdown. They review there's no point that you're not reviewing all these things, because to put that on the Preds literally that might have been the series right there. Not that they're ever going to win this series. We know that. Yeah. I really said that.
They're not even going to win a game.
Yeah.
But regardless, that game is tied 3-3. They score a goal that was questionable. It was worth at least a review. Whether or not you can say whether or not you think it was really a bet. I mean, I still think the Rangers goal should have counted more than this goal. But I'm not saying, that was more of a bad goal call. But the fact that the Predators have to challenge that, they have to challenge it. And they
let Mike go. He's going to have a heart attack over there.
Go.
This
puts the Avalanche, the best freaking power play in the world.
The whole point of the penalty, Eck, is the fact that the coaches are going to use reviews as a second timeout.
Do we not want to get things right in this league? Do we not care?
All right, actually, the answer was given yesterday. Even though Don Koharski was largely creating a Saturday Night Live skit by how long he was taking to describe a call like this, he did say one thing that made sense. Only 36 goals out of 880 were overturned. So they're basically trying to make it almost impossible for them to overturn a goal anyhow. That's why the penalty's there, because the league doesn't want them to do it. They're basically saying, listen, if you're going to do it, this is the risk for you. Because
you have no choice. The Predators have no choice. The Predators have no choice to challenge that.
Hold on. Koharski said most of the time they're going to call it a goal on the ice, so it makes it that much harder to overturn when they're reviewing it. So you're really rolling. It's a bad dice roll for most of these video replays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bigger call I thought was the Carolina-Boston call, because that's what happened there.
That was too.
That's exactly what happened, and then they got it wrong. And Brindamore said he would have bet his life on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And as Mike Johnson said on NHL Network, well, it's a good thing he didn't because they needed him at the end of that game.
I mean, and listen, and the fact that we sit there and we're like, we're saying that the coaches shouldn't be able to do this because they'll do it all the time. Give them one free challenge in the playoffs or something, because there aren't that many instances like this.
I don't think your rule change is unrealistic in the playoffs. To take it to review every goal in a playoff series. Why not do it? I mean, you can't change it now, but like what?
College hockey, they do it in college hockey.
Yeah, like I don't understand why they couldn't do that.
No,
I don't get it. I mean, I see this in the regular season. I know you don't want to time things, so
right? But in the playoffs, why not?
Everything. I mean, that series. I mean, the Preds had no chance. Now they really have no chance, But they at that point, I mean, it's just crazy. And these teams have no. It's not like they can't not try it. They have to try it if it's questionable. I mean, they can't if they don't challenge that. What do we say?
Now we have 4 series right now that are tied 2-2. And
Mike, before you say that, do you not admit that if this was the Maple Leafs or the Canadiens, but it's the Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes, if it's the Maple Leafs or the Canadiens or the Bruins or the Flyers or the Rangers or the Penguins, this is a way bigger issue right now. But it's the
I think it's a big issue for any team. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's talking about the Carolina thing.
Yeah,
yeah, but why aren't we saying we just review every? I mean, I'm not hearing people say what I'm saying.
You can't change it in the middle. They wouldn't do it in the middle. But
it's time consuming.
But this isn't it's who cares? They can't get it right.
They do. They want these games.
Well, but Mike, let me just go. We all watch the NFL, and basically they just stand there for a second, and they know as soon as that ball is scored. Now in NFL we have the extra point, which buys them a little time. But here, you just have the referee stand at center ice. Yeah. You have someone right there. You wait, and you tell everybody you're going to have to do it in 45 seconds.
But you would admit there are more goals scored than touchdowns, and like some of them there are no doubt. Sure. You see they hit the back of the net.
Right.
You don't have to
95% of them. There's no doubt. I mean, really,
yeah. So I would say it would probably cost them about 4 or 5 minutes at the most. In an extra game. Now you'd have to limit it too. You'd have to say, you guys have got to hustle and get it done. But I don't know why you just because the goals are important. So
Kevin's right. Koharski said it literally. The referees do, even though it's not a rule, literally only give the video coach and the other bench 45 seconds. That's it.
Yeah.
Now I would have to say.
Make a decision.
I would have to say that right now, of those 4 series that are tied 2-2, that the biggest surprise is LA tied with Edmonton, because especially the fact that Edmonton blew them out in games 2 and 3, but when Quick is on, like he was yesterday, he wins in Edmonton in game 1 and he shuts them out in game 4. Yeah. I mean, without Doughty, without Arvidsson, they're matching up again. And I think this partially because McClellan is a veteran coach and he's got a young team and they're doing what he wants them to do. And I think right now Edmonton's got such a sizable talent advantage, Kev, and I can't believe that they're tied with this team right now.
Yeah. These series all just have been crazy. Like I mean, Eck and I had talked before, and we were talking about the lack of overtime, and yet I have found these series to all be compelling because of the tightness of it, and in that LA Edmonton. The goaltenders, every other game has been the other goalie.
Right.
Either one guy has been terrible, or the other guy has been great. One or the other, and it's really that has been a goaltender series, even though the scores don't look like it. So that's really been an interesting series, and I think it could go either way. And I guess all these series, with the exception of Colorado, does anyone feel safe?
No. I mean, I think right now the teams that right now are the most verklempt are Calgary in the West and Florida in the East. I mean, not to say that Calgary didn't expect a tough series from Dallas, but I didn't think they would see Jake Ottinger standing on his head and stealing 2 games from him.
But here's the thing. It's not only that, Mike. I just switched my allegiance. I had a chance on a different show to switch any of my picks, and the only one I switched was Dallas. because I do think Calgary's playing it right into Dallas's hands.
Yeah.
Ottinger is a good goalie. Like, he was always going to be good.
Right.
They knew that. You know that. I know that. But Calgary's got to change the way they play a little bit. They got to unleash their top line a little bit, or they're going to lose this series, because if every game comes down to a tight game, you're playing every game like Game 7. They're going to lose that series with all that talent.
Kachuk is acting like he's Kyle Clifford. You know, he's a first-line, talented 40-goal scorer.
He's a guy, but
well, Klingberg has shown his a little bit more of his value than I
think you're right about that.
We need
like
him.
Klingberg, we were all talking about how much is he really worth? What's he really worth?
Yeah.
He's become like a factor in this
with
series.
Calgary. They need Kachuk to score because they don't have enough.
I just said that on another show. It's so fun.
And he's running around like a chicken with its head cut off. It's like, you know, I mean, I you know, you want that from your top 6 forwards, but at a certain point, you need them to put the puck in the net. And what do they have? Like 2 goals in 3 games. I mean, they haven't scored. They need to score. Now the St. Louis and Minnesota. I mean, how many defensemen on the Blues are dropping like flies?
Wow, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but they switched to Binnington. Binnington wins. Now that series is tied. You know, I don't put the loss on Fleury yesterday. I put the
no.
Yeah, I mean, but those are 2 even teams that if Minnesota expected St. Louis to just capitulate, they weren't going to.
Yeah, but it's amazing that they've held in there. Those are 3 significant defensemen.
Yes.
It's really been impressive that they've kind of hung in there because Minnesota, as we all know, is a good team.
I think St. Louis rallied behind Binnington in that game. I was watching it, and that was the feeling that I got was they dug deep for that one, and because Minnesota was playing a good game for a while. They were. Yeah. Honestly, I think it's the best series. I do.
Yeah. Well, it's some fascinating things. Like, you know I've read the Twitter today, and just the Ranger fans are just beside themselves. But really, when it comes down to it, if Shesterkin, who was really the best goalie in the league this season, if he doesn't have one, bad period, and that's all it was, just one bad period, which happens, like they'd be leading the series, and they haven't played well. The Rangers.
I'm still convinced the Rangers are going to come back into that series and win because I think that Tristan Jarry practicing is just window dressing. It's going to be Domingue until maybe late in the series, and that's I know he played decently in that game, but they were 4-0, and the Rangers came back and tied it. They had every chance to win that game, and having Domingue in net gives them that opportunity.
There's a couple things. They lost Lindgren, so that shook up their defensive pairs, which aren't the most solid for the Rangers. I think they got away from using their kid line in one of the games. Then the last game they used them a little more. They got some production out of that, but their top line could give them more production. Their power play could be a little better. But I think Shesterkin, I don't have the stat with me, but I'm pretty sure in bounce back games he was near perfect, like maybe 2 or 3, maybe 2 losses the whole year.
Right.
So I'm still expecting a big game out of him because I think they know, hey, you lose this one in Pittsburgh, you're in trouble. So I think this is going to be Shesterkin's game.
And who are the usual suspects in that for the Penguins? Gensel, Rust, Crosby. It's I mean, come on, who you have to concentrate on. Those are the guys that kill you because they're great.
But
Gensel's really been good.
It's hard to cover. Like, how do you can't really? Here's the problem: if you're going to cover Crosby, Gensel's going to be open. Yeah. And if you cover Gensel, then Crosby's going to kill you. Like, that's a line that it's hard to cover.
There's a common theme running through here, guys, and that is the teams that are really surprising, or not surprising, but really maybe outperforming they should be, have all won like Stanley Cups or been there recently. Like, straight up Boston, even Boston, St. Louis, Washington.
Washington is the one that shocks me the most. I mean, I was expecting Game 3, that the Florida was just going to bowl over them, and it was at 6-1. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, all of a sudden,
Florida played better than them in that game at times. Like that's
Florida was better than the last game of Samsonov, it's totally.
Samsonov was a big difference maker.
You couldn't have predicted that. He had 9 games in April where he was he was sub 900 save percentage. In fact, both Capitals goalies were below 900. They really didn't have a good choice going into that thing. And Samsonov played great. Like Florida was the better team in that game.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't we love afternoon hockey in the first round?
I love being able to watch all the games.
The triple header on Saturday was beautiful.
Yeah, just one right after another. It was just terrific. Now you can only do it the first round.
Was so much fun. Bubble, we had that all the time. I love that. I love being able to watch every game because you really want to see every game. You want to see everything that's going on.
Now we already talked about the goal situation, but the goalie situation with Carolina is the one that I'm intrigued by because they went from Kochetkov, they went back to Ranta in Game 4. I don't know if I would put the loss on Ranta. I mean,
you can't put the loss on Ranta. They played stupid hockey. But the only thing is I'm going to go back to Kochetkov was at least aggressive against the Bruins and handled the crease better as far as guys like Marchand or whatever. He was giving it back to them.
Yeah.
I think they need that more than they need the veteran in Ranta because it's easy to get them to not play stupid hockey next game. Like I think Brendan Moore will do that. But I think that extra aggressiveness in goal is what I would still be shooting for.
And, of course, I'm going to save the best for last because which team is the real Maple Leafs? The team that showed up in Game 1 and dominated.
Same thing about the Tampa Bay Lightning,
and the game, and the one that showed up.
All of them. That is the Leafs.
Yeah. Plus,
they're a Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, but I just had this conversation via email with a fan this morning. It was the same thing, and I said, you never want to pay homage to what the other team is doing,
right?
You're always looking at not you personally, but maybe you personally, but the fan always looks at it as what my team is not doing instead of what both teams are doing and why your team can't do that because the other team may be playing well that day.
Well, I'm in the middle of writing my column for today, and the adage that I used is the more things change, the more they stay the same. And with the Leafs, like with the series against Montreal last year, who is not showing up in the first two games? Marner and Matthews were fantastic. All of a sudden, Tampa Bay, they put Killorn, Cirelli, and Point up against the Matthews and Marner line, and they've shut them down. Now, doing that, everything falls on Tavares and Nylander to provide secondary scoring. Up until garbage time, Nylander had no points in 4 games. Then he scores 2 goals in the third period after lollygagging in the second period and being benched. And Tavares has 2 sort of semi-meaningless assists in 4 games, and he even admits that he's upset with himself that he's not producing more. And they limited his minutes to like 14. And he's not playing with an injury. So they're getting offense from third, fourth line guys, and that's good. But you need your big guys to score, and they're not scoring, and that's the problem.
Well, but is it them or is it the fact that the Lightning are playing well? I mean, it's always a combination of both. And the one thing that I would bring up, which I thought was kind of comical, the lead into NHL Network today was, I guess it is true that the Lightning can just flick a switch and go on. Well, no, it isn't, or they would have won the series 4-0. In fact, I would argue that even when they won, they haven't looked like the Lightning of old. Like they really have not been good in the series, at least good defined by what we've seen from them over the last 2 years. And
yet they're so tied.
They've had some nice stretches when they've played some good hockey, but I'm sure if you ask John Cooper, does this team resemble the 2 championship teams? He's going to say no. It doesn't, and it hasn't.
Well, Elliot Friedman came up with a great statistic, and I didn't realize this, but in looking at it, and it's exactly true. Over the 6 years, the 6 straight years that the Leafs have made the playoffs, when they have led in the series in the playoffs, 3-1 against Montreal, 2-1 against whoever, they are 1-8. They cannot, and they have not finished. Now, Keefe said it yesterday. They've got it's now a best of 3 series, and they've got 2 games at home. It's all on them. If they play like they did in game 1 and 3, they win this series. And if they play like they played in games 2 and 4, they lose. And so, I mean,
Not all on them though. It's also on the Lightning what they can do.
well,
they can't just say, "I'm totally committed to winning this. I'm going to do it." The Lightning will have a say in it.
But Kev, the thing is, I'm expecting the Lightning to come out like they did in games 2 and 4 because they're a championship team. And the thing is, the Leafs had a chance to put a stranglehold on the series, and they literally did not show up. I think they thought that the game started at 7:30, and it started at 7 because 8 minutes in they were down 3-0. I mean, there's no excuse for that.
I think, honestly, this is the way I'm looking at it. And I know you have a hard time looking at it this way, Mike, but I think Kevin might see it this way. This is a heavyweight fight where it's like punch, counter punch. I think this is going the distance, and it really is going to take that last game to decide it.
Both these teams are flawed. Both these teams have flaws, but both these teams have amazing players.
They're good too. It's disingenuous to say they didn't show up. They just didn't perform to the way you wanted them to play. Right. But a lot of that had to do with how the Lightning were playing in that game.
And what's perfect about that, Kev, like when you say that, like I heard that stat from Elliot Friedman as well, the 1-9. Well, guess what the Lightning are in their last 15 playoff losses, when they come back the next day.
15.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's working in both opposite directions. That's working against Toronto in two directions, right? Yeah. So that's not surprising that we're seeing punch.
It's just an interesting series, you know what I mean, where it goes back and forth. They have stretches and really that's the way hockey is that, the team looks good for a period and then suddenly they don't look so good because the other team rises up. And, I think it's been entertaining. And I think the Lightning have figured out, they're not quite as good, but they're still good. They're just not as good as they were in the past. And, Toronto is very good. But
the question of Sheldon Keefe plays into this.
So
what's that, Russ?
Bring up the Sheldon Keefe question that was asked to him.
Oh, well, and I have a lot of respect for Steve Simmons when some people don't, and I don't know why, but he asks the questions that some reporters won't. And at the end of the game, the Leafs started off slow, and they started in their starting lineup, their bottom pairing of Giordano and Justin Hall. Justin Hall, in my opinion, is the worst of the six defensemen. And he was directly responsible for the goal that Stamkos scored a minute into the game. So Steve Simmons at the end after the game asked Keefe, "Why did you start your worst defenseman?" And Keefe responded, "Who's my worst defenseman?" He said, "Justin Hall." He says, "Well, I don't agree with that." Then didn't answer the question. And the reason he did is because, the fourth line was out there for Tampa. But the problem is Justin Hall shouldn't even be in the lineup because Timothy Liljegren played the first two games and played well, and they put Hall in there.
But I think that was Steve Simmons' clever way of doing it.
Right.
And it may have outraged some people. I got texts over it. But I think Simmons I think he did it in an interesting way. I'm not saying I would do it that way, but he knows every fan feels that way.
Well, that's a question that's a good reporter, if you're asking a question that fans are thinking, right? But the way you say it at the same time, you don't say it. I wouldn't say it. You're your worst defenseman. I would say, why did you start your third pairing?
Right, exactly. That's what I said to Russ. I says if he had said, "Why did you start your bottom pairing?" that there wouldn't have been the hubbub that there was. But because he said worst defenseman, and of the six, Hall is clearly the worst of the six.
But isn't that the one egregious thing you're looking at with the Leafs lineup right now and saying, why are you doing this? Yes, every fan is doing that.
Well, the other thing is, and not to get into the minutia, but whether they, because Tampa got a little physical and a little, Corey Perry and Maroon pulling their bull crap, whether Simmons or Clifford will be put back in the lineup. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. I wanted to touch on something because the NHL announced the three leading candidates for the Norris.
Yes.
Cale Makar, Roman Josi, and Victor Hedman. I don't think that's a real shock that anyone.
No. Yeah, I thought that was an easy one, other than who wins, which I think. But I thought Hedman and Fox may be challenging for some people just because offense versus all around game. That was a pretty simple one, and I would assume Makar is going to win that. But that's just a guess, just based on, he scored a lot more goals, and there's a dynamic nature to him. I
feel you're right. I feel you're right, Kev. But the thing about it is, the reason I turned around so much on Roman Josi was because I realized when I finally saw him live, even though I had been watching him in games all year, how many things he has to do right for that team to win.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only
So
Yossi has a
right.
bad game. They have no chance of winning.
Well,
And he's not exactly not dynamic. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
Yossi he's up the ice all the time. He's behind the other goal like 3 or 4 times a game. You know,
Yeah.
like he's behind the opposing team's goal.
I wonder in the voting, Kev, whether there's going to be like a Harry Howell effect in terms of Yossi. Like, okay, he gets the vote this year and he wins the Norris this year because we know Makar and Heiskanen and Quinn Hughes and whoever are going to win the next decade. This might be his last chance at winning the award. So maybe we give him the award this year. Maybe that happens.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was covering high school sports and people would complain about, when we were covering this school thing. And I say, you're giving me a lot more credit for a lot more thinking than I actually do about things.
There you go. I know.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've heard that before, but it's not something that I would think about, but maybe people do. So
I will say this. I think I just watching Makar and McKinnon play together, and I wrote about this. I think that this is the most dynamic forward defense combination we've had since Gretzky and Coffey. Like flat out, like just McKinnon and Makar together. I can't think of another forward defense combo that comes close to like that since Gretzky.
Yeah, I mean Letang and Crosby are pretty darn good.
Yeah, but Letang is not Makar.
No, but he's pretty good. Like he's 100 years old and he got 70 points this year, or 68 or something.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, and I think Letang might be better in some ways than Makar in his prime. But Makar is Makar's dynamicness of like that's like.
Doughty.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just throwing a guy out as a.
Yeah, that was the only other combination I could think of too. But I just
Doughty and Kopitar.
I would go Messier Leach. Messier Leach was pretty dynamic.
Yeah, Messier was kind of not in his peak though when that was going.
No, he wasn't at his peak.
Yeah.
McKinnon is at his peak. Makar is at his peak.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about when Makar goes flying up the ice to create offense. He's got a lot of weapons up there. When Yossi goes flying up there,
that's not much. Yeah,
I want to mention this because sometimes you kind of wonder when you're watching young players what's transferable, like in the NHL. And when I saw McKinnon play in a Q game, it was the only Q game I had seen, but I wanted to go see him. I had noted the speed through the neutral zone, and I was like, wow, this is the best speed that I've ever seen through the neutral zone of any hockey player. And the odd thing is, it's still holding up. Like, he still has the most speed through the neutral zone of any hockey player. Like, it's hard to do. It's actually kind of mind-boggling to me that even something that he was doing regularly in juniors, he could still do regularly in the NHL.
I know. I mean, this. I wrote a blog about. Are we finally seeing the McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon era? Like, are we finally seeing the three? I call it the 3Ms. Are we finally seeing that era now take over from the Crosby Ovechkin era? Is that Crosby Ovechkin era finally leaving us?
I would hope so. They're in their mid-20s now. They're 24, 25 years old. So
it's not going to happen until we see playoff success from those 3 guys. Like it's got to.
But this is not an individual sport, Act. That's the whole point.
No, but I know. But the stars of that era, of that ilk, to be given their own era.
Well,
they have to win in the playoffs.
Kevin knows Yzerman did not have playoff. He lost to the Leafs in '93. He lost to San Jose in '94. He didn't have playoff success until in '95. They got to the finals against New Jersey. He didn't have Stanley Cup victory playoff success until for 12 years into his career.
They actually, the fan base actually blamed Yzerman for the lack of success. You know what crystallized everyone's thoughts about Yzerman was when the rumors floated that they were trying to trade him to Ottawa. And then almost as if the fan base said, well, wait a minute. You can trade our Stevie Yzerman.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what the problem is? We're now in an era where Patrick Maroon can dangle and score a goal, and he's winning cup after cup after cup.
Yeah, and it gives credence to his chirping on the bench.
I've never seen a move like that from Maroon.
I've got 3 cups in a row. How many do you have?
Is he the new Claude Lemieux?
He really is, because raise your hand if you've ever seen him do anything remotely like that. I mean, I never have.
Yeah.
Act, do you have the draft simulator?
Yeah, let's do the draft simulator. We got it tomorrow. And tomorrow I would like to talk on the show about how I'm going to write about this, but how I think and how you guys out there, and Russ, you'll be the best to help us with this. What would getting the first round overall pick mean to like the top 6 or 7 teams here? Like, what actually does that mean for those particular teams? Because that's what we're going to be. Because it means a ton, but with tomorrow night is
it won't be like getting Austin Matthews. I'll tell you.
No, but I do have a rooting interest, and it won't be shocking into who I'm rooting against in terms of winning the lottery, but I'll keep that to myself.
Yeah, I can already guess.
Okay, here we go. Ready? We're gonna do it once. This is all that matters, guys. The rest of the day, this is exactly what's gonna happen.
Will be 5th.
Montreal. There you go, Mike.
Hate it. Hate it.
Yeah. Montreal, the Flyers slide down to 5. Seattle slides down
Which
to
is
4.
what I said. The Flyers are going to go 5th. It's a guaranteed mortal lock.
Chicago, again, when the Flyers have an opportunity to do something, Chicago again will slide above them, which was the case with Van Beesbrook and Patrick Kane.
Well, the one thing they've done on the lottery, like it's almost an 80% now that you stay where you are. So that's
because of 2017.
Right.
Because the amount that the Devils and the Flyers moved up was insane.
Yeah, I think it's good, and I think that is definitely better.
I still think you should have a higher percentage if you're a bad team. Like 17 isn't high enough. That's it should be like 30. So.
But
every team has a chance. It's not.
Yeah, but they don't want to encourage
tanking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 30 still is discouraging.
It's still a roll.
Yeah. It's still not perfect. Well, we'll see. We'll find out tomorrow, but we'll talk about that tomorrow on the show for sure. I think that'll be a good topic to get into. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. 7:00. It's only 5 hours away.